Joining us now is the author, Dr. Qanta Ahmed, Senior Fellow for the Independent Women's Forum. Wonderful to have you this morning, Qanta. You know, your piece
Pleasure, Kelly.
really, it cuts sharply to the central arguments, some of the deep thought that set in, I believe, in the wake of this tragedy. You know, you mentioned the danger, the American electorate being so deeply otherized, one side against the other, that there's no compassion left. How do you believe we got here? How do we get past it and make positive change?
First of all, it's important to say this is an American tragedy for every American. I'm devastated for the family of Charlie Kirk. I also see it as an assault on our ability to speak about ideas, gather, and express our religion. So this is a cataclysmal event. It also affects any of us. And during this week, I've spoken to many of my friends who also comment on incendiary issues. I'm frequently speaking about terrorism and radical Islam, and we now recognize the risks. So America was the one last place where this was safe to do, and now we see that that safety has literally been devastated. I think that this funeral is going to be hugely impactful, and we are going to see this terrible split in response. One where we are revering it and we are weeping and we are mourning, and the other where there will be a demonization of it. And the big element that's so different than other events, whether it was 9/11, where there were terrorists and supporters of terrorists who were glorifying that, and those of us that were impacted and devastated who were changed forever by that, or the assault on the acclaimed author Salman Rushdie, who lived under death threats and still does and was recently attacked. Now we have social media that amplifies these differences, and that is where the killer was the killer was immersed in assassination culture. We have to recognize we're living in an assassination culture now that glorifies this. Remember the United Healthcare CEO, the commodification of that, the glorification of this. That is what is impacting so much of American youth.
Yeah, social media, do you see that as a major problem now? You know, you outlined some major concerns for the freedom of speech in America that you foresee. Would you mind explaining the risk facing that very fundamental freedom in our country?
We know from research from the Network on Contagion Research Institute at Princeton that up to 55% of Americans now believe that political violence is acceptable. There is a red line. Political violence is never acceptable. In my values and the values of most Americans, violence is unacceptable, but political violence has no place. And additionally, that is projected on figures like our president, who's lived through 2 assassinations. Notice we're now looking at the trial of the other would-be assassin at the same time. That's how important it's become. Social media, I believe, and the media and tech companies have abrogated their responsibility. If we look back to the Rwandan genocide in 1994, there were media executives held culpable for crimes against humanity because of the hate messages they propagated. We also saw convictions of that nature in the Nuremberg trials, because that was also messaging was also part of the genocide of the Holocaust. There has to be responsibility for allowing materials on internet platforms that are taking our youth into this kind of nihilism and assassination culture. If there was no such platforms, the ideas would not be able to travel to this degree and not become mainstream, where people are now wearing T-shirts, financing musicals, raising monies for assassins. This has become so deep, accountability has to come back.
Yeah, and the question becomes, what does that accountability look like? To your point about, you know, political violence being acceptable, what's alarming about some of the stats we've taken a look at is that that does tend to skew to the younger generation. So really appreciate the conversation. I wish we had more time. Dr. Ahmed, Great to see you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.